So health is directly related to Agni,
Hmm.
and that is directly proportionate to the loss of muscle mass. If you see people having problems with balance or posture or whatever, it's actually an aspect of the muscle mass. Health is not just the absence of disease. Health is a vibrant, balanced approach to healing. And I think that that's what the Eastern traditions have given us. Lifestyle and nutrition are categorically, emphatically important in terms of changing our karma from a genetic point of view.
What happens when a highly trained surgeon who spent decades inside conventional medicine decides to follow a deeper calling into ancient healing wisdom? This conversation will shake your knowledge about food. It will give you the key to explore health from a deeper perspective. You will learn about the mind body connection and why, when humans gather with intention and goodwill, we can positively influence the collective consciousness. My guest, Dr. Bill Jean, is a former allopathic urologic surgeon who retired from Western medicine to devote his life fully to Ayurveda, the ancient traditional system of medicine rooted in energy balance, which, translating from Sanskrit, means the science of life. Dr. Jean's journey into Ayurveda began in the 90s through his studies with the Chopra organization, eventually leading him to integrate Ayurvedic principles into his medical practice and later to earn a certification as an Ayurvedic doctor. I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Jean in person at the Printers Row Lit Fest in Chicago last year, where he was promoting his newest book, Foods Heal. He carries a bright, joyful presence that instantly put me at ease. This conversation invites us to remember that we do have agency over our health and that healing is not only personal, it ripples to the collective. So let's dive in. Welcome to Good is What Makes You Feel Well, Mama Terra's podcast. Each week, we will explore topics that impact your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health through inspiring transformation stories. Here, you will find practical guidance and actionable strategies to apply in your daily life. I'm your host, Ana Rezende, author, health coach, and speaker. I'm here to help you protect your energy, strengthen your well-being, and thrive through life's transitions. Speaking of life transitions, I would love for you to go to Amazon and check my book, Living Your Best Life in College, which I wrote as a guide for young adults transitioning from high school to college. If you are a student, a parent, a teacher, or someone who cares about well-being, this book might be a game changer. Now, let's dive in and discover all the different ways you can feel well. Vista transcende, levita. Hello, Dr. Jean.
Hello, Anna. How are you?
Doing good. Welcome.
Great. Thank you.
Welcome to Good is
Nice to
What
be
Makes You
here.
Feel Well. For us to start our conversation, I would like to ask you what, in this moment of your life, makes you feel well?
Right now, it's exercise
Hmm.
because exercise is, from an Ayurvedic point of view, really important in terms of improving Agni, which is the digestive fire.
Hmm.
And that concept of digestive fire, which translates for us in the West as metabolism, is a very important factor in terms of health. And when people lose their ability to have good Agni, their health deteriorates because, from a Western perspective, it means that actually the metabolic engine of the body is being lost.
Mm.
One of the easiest ways to improve agni or digestive fire is through exercise. Herbs may be impactful to some degree. Sometimes the foods that are correctly prepared can improve agni, but really the most important aspect of exercise is that it induces a strong agni. I think
Mm.
we may have seen people who are athletes who they can eat anything.
Mm-hmm.
They can eat all the junk food in the world. They never gain weight. They never look unhealthy. And it's because they have such a strong digestive fire that they are just a strong engine, metabolic engine, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just watching Mark Wahlberg last night on Jimmy Fallon, and he's known in his as his background that he gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning, exercises for 1 to 2 hours, has breakfast, and then does his day, goes to bed around 8 o'clock or so in the evening, and he's religious about this aspect of his life, and he's phenomenally in shape. It was really interesting. Fallon gives him a piece of pizza from a particular New York pizza place that he likes to go to, that Wahlberg likes to go to. And then they show a little clip of a particular film that Wahlberg is in. And by the time the clip is done, Wahlberg has just eaten this piece of pizza just so rapidly that it's just phenomenal. It's really funny. But it shows another important fact of this concept of Agni, and that
Mm.
is Agni is actually expressed through our appetite.
Mm-hmm.
So when people have really strong, I mean, healthy appetites, I mean, there are unhealthy appetites. There are appetites that are what I would call excessive.
Mm-hmm.
What that means is that the appetite is so strong that people can't stop, can't eat fast enough, that their agni is overwhelming them, that they would eat cardboard if it was available and they were so hungry. It's just it's so strong that they can't do anything but just think about food.
Mm.
So there's a point where Agni can be too strong, but there's a point where Agni is too weak, or it's often hit and miss. It's AC/DC kind of thing.
Mm.
So it's that aspect of Agni that we appreciate when imbalances occur in the physiology. So that's what gets us to the point of understanding that from a Western point of view, it's glucose that really drives our appetite, right? It's glucose that says, you need to feed me because my glycogen stores are down in the liver. I've got to have some food or I'm really going to start feeling badly.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's the Agni from a Eastern perspective, from an Ayurvedic perspective, that really shows us that it's more than just glucose. It's an important aspect of our physiology from an energy point of view.
Mm.
Long-winded discussion about Agni, but it's what we call in the book the precious gift.
Uh-huh. I love this concept. So, exercise is the way we can improve Agni, the fastest way to improve Agni or
Right.
the digestive fire. So, how does exercise look like for you?
Actually, to go back a little bit, there's a concept in Western physiological terms that says that after age 30, we lose 10% of our muscle mass per decade. So if you happen to be 60 years of age, you've lost 30% of your muscle mass if you're not doing something about it. The biggest engine for Agni or improving Agni is muscle mass.
Mm.
So what happens as we age is we lose our ability to digest properly just because our Agni is going down as our muscle mass is going down.
Mm.
What that says is that if you lose muscle mass, you lose Agni because muscle mass is what gets us to move. We transport ourselves through life and we move from A to B.
Mhm.
And in so doing, we use energy of the muscles. What happens when people get injured or they affect certain parts of their body, actually they really lose muscle function in certain parts of their body. And when they do that, they they accelerate their muscle loss.
Mm.
And so when we lose muscle mass, we physiologically become less healthy. And I believe my personal bias is that as people age, if they don't do things to keep their muscle mass in tip-top shape, what happens to them is they gradually, progressively lose their health. So health is directly related to Agni, and
Mhm.
that is directly proportionate to the loss of muscle mass. So sedentary lifestyle, which we all exhibit to some degree or another, has to be countered in some way with a good exercise program. And what is a good exercise program? Well, the lifting weights or resistance training is a really great way to counter what happens to us as we age. Because we're losing muscle mass every decade, then we have to counter that in some way. And that gets to the point of conscious awareness of what you need to do versus unconscious awareness. You know, there are people who go to the gym when they're young and they're hitting milestones, but then they grow tired of it or they become distracted and they stop going to the gym. They felt really healthy when they were going to the gym, but then they stop and not knowing that that is detrimental to their health. And then they reach an age of 45 or 50 and they realize, oh, I'm not really feeling good at all. I'm gaining weight. I'm miserable. Sometimes mentally they feel poor. So that kind of direction that occurs unconsciously because they don't know why they feel bad. When they get to that point where they are feeling bad but don't know why, they're becoming what we call in the book unconscious incompetence.
Mm.
And so that's what really is important with this particular information is that you become a conscious competent when you become healthy because then you really know why and you know why you're doing what you're doing. So if you use the information that the West provides us with modern science and the physiological information that we have, then we can realize, oh, yeah, I see why I do what I do, and I see what is going to happen for me if I do it. So,
Yeah, that awareness is everything, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
So, how your exercise routine look like?
Oh, Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Mhm.
The body needs rest to build muscle. If you're not resting the muscle groups that you're exercising, then you really take a backward step, so to speak. So for me, I have to take a day off. I would like to do 4 days a week, but we'll see how that goes. It's just a matter of watching and being aware of how the body feels. The other important thing about exercise and weight training is that you have to provide the body with enough fuel to build the muscles. There are many different ways to do that. The easiest and best way is to use protein like bison. I like bison,
Hmm.
particularly because it's healthier than beef from an energy perspective. Chicken, white chicken is really good. And then there are supplements on the market. Whey protein is a common thing that's used. My son-in-law likes to use creatine. They feel that creatine is really a valuable supplement. I really haven't found that to be true because creatine is nothing but a small protein that's just composed of amino acids. So, what's the difference between the amino acids that you get from whey protein versus the amino acids that you get from creatine? So, I don't see there's much difference between the two. But for me, I think the jury is still out with respect to that. The important component with respect to lifting is that you actually improve the amount of fuel that you're giving the body so that you can build the muscle that you want. The speed with which you build muscle varies according to age and constitutional makeup.
Mm-hmm.
So if you happen to be a big, beefy linebacker for the Green Bay Packers, um, you happen to you happen to be able to build muscle very quickly. My daughter used to date a guy who would go to the gym, and she said, I couldn't believe it. Alex would walk out of the gym and he looked bigger than when he went in.
Wow.
And she said, and actually that was just fluid, like, right? Because fluid goes into the muscles during exercise. So there's this fluid influx. So yeah, he could actually look bigger, but in reality, it's also a matter of the genetic response to the exercise itself. And
Mm-hmm.
that varies enormously from individual to individual. The increase in muscle mass takes time. I mean, true muscle mass takes time. I mean, people who get injured, saying they have a back problem and they have back pain, they think that if they do some walking, that that's going to help their back. And it may to some degree. It will not compare anything close to what you get when you're lifting.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, if somebody has injured their back, it may take 2 to 3 years, dependent upon their age, to get rid of their back pain. And we are such a short-sighted culture that we want the result yesterday, that it becomes a point of, oh, this isn't working, so I'm going to quit.
Yeah.
And that's the real problem in our culture right now is that we want our results so quickly that we're not willing to be patient to do the work in order to get to it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, lack of consistency.
Yes. That's everything. That's
Mm-hmm.
everything. As a matter of fact, I think anyone who's listening to this would realize that that's really problematic in everything we do, not just based on exercise, but on all things that we do.
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't
Yeah.
agree more. So, do you lift weights then? Monday, Wednesdays, and
Yeah, yeah.
Fridays?
Mhm. You're right. I have a lifting schedule that I've pursued for the last 3 years, and slowly but surely, you just progress at your own rate, you know? You
Mm-hmm.
decide where you want to go and how much you want to lift. And you start at some place and you get to that place, and then you may move on, may stay at a certain place and with respect to the weights.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very individual in terms of how one feels with respect to the amount of weight you're lifting.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think that the important thing is to hit all areas. And there are certain places where sometimes they're missed, like calf raises are something that's very helpful and valuable, but oftentimes people miss that area because they're too busy focused on the quads or upper body and focused on the biceps, but they forget about the forearms. They tend to get so focused on the amount of weight they're lifting. I'm talking about people who are really rabid lifters. They get so involved in the amount of weight that they forget certain other areas, so they get focused on the chest and how much they can lift from the chest or how much they can do in the squat that they forget about other areas of the body. So you need, I think, a relatively well-rounded kind of program. Yeah.
Yeah, to reach all the main muscle groups, right?
Right, but don't forget about the smaller groups like the
Oh,
forearms,
yeah.
or don't forget about the calves
Mm,
because the gastroc or the soleus muscle of the lower leg below the knee, that really affects the health and the muscle of the feet.
mm,
And so if you address those aspects, then you have or achieve what I would call balance. Balance not only in terms of the benefits of all parts of the body, but also the benefits of balance itself. That
mm,
is, oh, I lost my balance. I'm falling off to one side or another. That balance, with respect to neuromuscular function, is actually an aspect of muscle.
mm-hmm.
If you see people having problems with balance or posture or whatever, it's actually an aspect of the muscle mass.
Mm.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense.
Hmm.
So now you say you exercise 3 times a week, and I know now more recently, well, I don't know how long ago you started Ayurveda and everything related to energy and whatnot. But how this concept of feeling well has evolved throughout your life.
Sure. You know, there was a point when I was in practice that I kind of went about my life as a kind of aerobic training.
Mm,
That is, I ran to some degree. I didn't like it so much, but I felt that it was a way to be healthy. And then there was a time where I was just feeling there was something missing, I guess.
mm, mm-hmm,
And it was at that point that I started looking at various traditions in the East, like Ayurveda. And actually, what prompted me to move in that direction was actually spiritual practices like meditation.
mm,
But what I found as I continued to explore that was that there was a much more broad way of seeing health that kind of got me hooked into using the energy sciences of the yoga tradition to start looking at health in a different way and expanding the concept of health. From the UN, there's this definition that health is not just the absence of disease. Health is a vibrant, balanced approach to healing. And I think that that's what the Eastern traditions have given us, if we want to look at it. And I think that there are subtle movements in that direction with respect to health and what it means to be healthy. But you see, it's actually a blend. As we talk about in the book, it's actually about what I would call a holistic approach. Holistic means a wholeness, approach to health through wholeness. But what is wholeness? Wholeness means to recognize that the body is both a matter and an energy field. So when we talk about wholeness, and use that concept. I mean, I'm literally talking about the pragmatic applications or the practical applications of health. What I'm talking about is not only using the quantitative approach, that is numbers, right? So it's well, how many calories are you taking in a day? From a macronutrient point of view, how many grams of protein, carbohydrates, fats, fiber am I taking in a day? That's a quantitative approach. And there is definitely, and this is where I think I've evolved over the last 4 or 5 years, is that there is value in the quantitative approach. If you come in to the doctor and you say, "Doctor, am I healthy?" Uh, he'll say, "Well, we've done your lab results, and Anna, we found that your cholesterol is fine, your glucose is great, and your fats are really in normal range. So you're healthy." And that's the quantitative approach. And now we have people who distrust the medical tradition, the medical discipline. RFK is Jr. is one of the leading proponents of this kind of approach that says, look, we've got a medical system that is wacko, and I'm going to tell you that we don't need vaccines, we don't need to do this and that, and I'm going to promote this alternative approach, which is just a terrible crime on the health traditions in our country. But it comes from, I believe, an honest position of feeling like we aren't getting enough out of our medical tradition. And so to have a holistic approach to health, it means that we need to have a qualitative approach as well. That is to say, there are qualities in the body that need to be in balance. And if the qualities in the body are out of balance, then we can't be healthy either. So when we were talking about Agni, we were saying, oh, well, if you've got too hot an Agni, then you're out of balance. That is to say, if I'm so hungry that you've got to feed me a Snickers or I'm going to go out of my mind, then that's unhealthy. That's an unhealthy Agni. But what it says is that I'm too hot. Now, that's a quality. That's a quality that we see in the body. So we not only have to be aware of the numbers that we measure, but we also have to be aware, have conscious awareness of these aspects that are feelings. That is, am I hot or am I cold? Am I too dense or am I too light? Am I too liquid or am I too dense? So these are all aspects that we need to learn if we're going to be a healthy person. Yeah. And so the qualitative and the quantitative have to come together in order for us to understand health.
If you are enjoying this episode but don't yet understand the multidimensionality of health, I created a free ebook to help you. It's a simple yet insightful few-page book you can read in less than 10 minutes. The ebook link is in the show notes. Now, back to the episode.
Yeah, so explain a little more for people that are listening to us, the qualities in terms of energy, how we can perceive them in the body.
Good. That's a great question. Ayurveda, in any energy tradition, whether it's Ayurveda, whether it's the traditional Oriental medicine tradition, whether it's Middle Eastern traditions, they all have this concept of energy, which they called prana or ki or chi or ru or rua. These were all names of these various energies that these various traditions have or had. But the aspect of how that energy is expressed in the body is understood through qualities. And in Ayurveda, there are 20 qualities. And these qualities are opposing or they're opposites of one another. So hot and cold. So balance means that you're neither.
Mm-hmm.
You're neither hot nor too cold. You're just right. And we've all had that experience. But if we go out into a windy fall day, we feel a chill. The body is experiencing some element of imbalance.
Mm.
There are other opposites, such as too slow or too fast. There are liquid and dense.
Mm.
There is hard and soft. There is oily and dry. Now, that's a very interesting opposition because when we think of dry, we think of water and we think of liquid. But in the energy tradition, dry is actually the lack of oil, of
Mm.
oiliness.
Mm-hmm.
So when our skin is dry, the antidote to that dryness is oiliness, is
Mm-hmm.
oil, not dipping yourself into the water. And everybody really actually knows that, really, don't we? We all know that I'm not going to jump into a bathtub if my skin feels dry. You're going to do something with a lubricant of some kind, and that lubricant typically is oily.
Mm-hmm.
So these 20 pairs of opposites we contend with all the time. We always are feeling them. We feel cold or we feel hot. We feel dry or feel oily. We feel some element of fatigue and feeling slow and what's called static versus movement. All of these are basic things that we are always experiencing. It's just that we have to become, if we want to be healthy from an energetic perspective, we have to be aware of them. And that's
Mm-hmm.
the whole point. So, awareness is the key to health. And it's not dissing them off, so to speak, right? Because if you tend to ignore these aspects in your physiology and continue to be distracted by too much work or too much mental activity, too much introspection, so to speak. If you get to that point where you're ignoring the sensations of the body in order to maintain balance in your life, then you're going to set yourself up for dis-ease down the line, whether it be cancer or whether it's coronary disease. Any of the chronic diseases all come from a lack of paying attention. Now, you know, I have a niece who developed breast cancer,
Mm-hmm.
and so she went through surgery, and she's fine now. But her response when she was telling me about her diagnosis at the very beginning of her journey in dealing with her breast cancer was she said, you know, I don't understand. I do not get it. I have been taking care of myself. I've been exercising. I've been doing all these things. And yet I get this diagnosis. I just don't understand how that could have happened. And, you know, there is this aspect of disease that we sometimes we don't appreciate, and that is that disease is actually just an expression of karma. That is to say, we genetically have karma. And sometimes, just even if we're doing all the things right, we still end up having to live through or experience a particular karma. We have to go through that because that's just our karma.
Hmm.
But what is DNA and the expression of DNA, but just an expression of physiological karma? And when we end up with these particular problems in our physiology, sometimes it's just because we're karmically destined to have to go through that. Doesn't mean that we weren't taking care of ourselves. Sometimes it just means that a karma has to happen, that we have to experience that in order to move on through our life. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but do you believe that with awareness and intention, we can not express something that is in our karma or not?
yes,
We can.
yes, I do. There are fixed karmas, which they're going to happen no matter what. But there are karmas that they can be ameliorated by activity or action.
Mm,
So, my example of my niece having this particular problem, she could have died from that disease had she not been healthier,
mm-hmm,
had she not been doing all the things that she did in order to come out of that on the other side in a positive way. So, in other words, her lifestyle and her choices and all of the things that she was doing to stay healthy actually prevented her demise and ameliorated the malignancy to the effect that it could be taken care of. I mean, look at the concept of prostate cancer.
mm,
PSA is a prostate specific antigen. It's not really a marker for cancer, it's a marker of inflammation.
mm-hmm,
And so people can express PSA, and it actually is just an expression of inflammation of the prostate. But there is enough correlation between PSA and cancer. It has been a marker to watch for specific changes that can occur in the physiology that can maybe express as cancer. So, an elevated PSA is something that one should pay attention to and have it worked up. But it's a way of defining the possibility of disease. It doesn't mean that you have the disease, but it means that you have the possibility, the probability of prostate cancer. Well, if you do things to reduce inflammation in the physiology, you may have prostate cancer, but it may not be terribly malignant or what we call anaplastic or a very malignant condition. So that a lifestyle choice of reducing inflammatory foods in your diet, reducing changes in the physiology that can produce inflammation through lifestyle. Those are all things that can ameliorate the malignancy itself and make it resectable and lead to somebody not being bothered by the diagnosis.
mm-hmm,
So, lifestyle and nutrition are categorically, emphatically important in terms of changing our karma from a genetic point of view.
mm-hmm,
And that's, in essence, a really important aspect of the energy tradition. So,
mm-hmm. And how can we find balance in the energy field through nutrition?
well, there are specific foods that create imbalance, no matter what your energy constitutional makeup is. So, if you are a consistent drinker of coffee, that will produce imbalance.
Mm,
I've become a firm believer that every time you eat something, it either produces balance or it produces imbalance. There's no in between. And if you want to see something happen in the physiology, you have to do it on a consistent basis. Like we were talking about exercise, and everybody knows this. All of the things that we're talking about is not rocket science. This is actually something we all know that if I go to the gym every day for 3 years, I will have a different body at the end of 3 years. If I go to the gym once a week for a couple of months and then bag it for the next 3 years, I know that I'm not going to achieve anything with respect to my body. All of these things that we're talking about are not esoteric concepts. They're things that we all know.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that we want to bring them up to consciousness, to awareness, so that we can understand and put them in a place of true understanding. So, certain foods can produce imbalances all the time, but they're basically foods that, if we eat according to our energy constitutional makeup, will provide us balance. So, for for people who are a particular energy constitutional makeup, tomatoes are really not something that you should be eating. They just are not good for you, period. But there are other constitutional makeups. The Green Bay Packer linebacker that we were talking about, he can eat tomatoes without any problem. They are compatible with his energy constitutional makeup. But for the others, for the rest of us, we shouldn't be eating them.
Mm.
Those are specific examples. As we talked about in the past, people get to the point where they feel that their diet is okay. They almost defend it from an evangelical point of view. They become so strong in their concept of what healthy eating is for them because they've learned it from their parents, from their friends, from their teachers, and they have created this understanding that this is the way to be healthy with respect to my nutrition. And by God, that's the way it's going to be. And unfortunately, that can have some real holes in it with respect to what foods can really be deleterious to us.
Mm-hmm.
Another aspect to this is that if you do something every time you eat that is beneficial to you and that improves your ability to digest, then that particular thing can be, over the long haul, like exercise, can be very, very beneficial to the physiology. So, for instance, if I use a herbal mixture called a masala with my food every time I eat, and that helps me digest the food and brings about balance to the physiology, then I'm doing something good every time I eat. So incorporating herbs in terms of cooking, in terms of eating, becomes something that is not only automatic, but it also has long-term benefits.
Mm-hmm.
So I can tell you that using, particular masalas and various herbs and incorporating that into your cooking can be extremely effective in terms of improving the health. Because, you see, from an energy perspective, the GI tract is the source of all disease in the body, except for trauma,
Yes.
except for trauma. Medical science is really coming to that point.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking at various the effects of probiotics and the effect of the microbiome and the improvement of health if the microbiome becomes more balanced and healthy. But the microbiome is merely an expression of Agni.
Mm-hmm.
That's really an important concept. The health of the GI tract and the health of the body begins at the level of the microbiome, but the microbiome is just an expression of Agni. It helps us digest food
Mm-hmm.
and gives us many other different physiological benefits. But we have to get to the point where we appreciate the concepts that we know in the West in terms of how they're expressed in the energy tradition. Because you see, if we understand these concepts and realize that, oh, this totally makes sense because both disciplines are telling us that this particular concept works on both sides. That is to say, if I understand a concept from an energy perspective, and then I see it now being expressed in the matter science perspective, then I see that there's real true validity. You see, if something that I'm seeing in the matter science work doesn't really fit with what the concept is in the energy science, I know that I can discard it. I know that it's just bogus information and that it will sometime in the future be proven wrong
Mm-hmm.
because there has to be a correlation between the matter and the energy science.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. When I was reading your book, that particular part about the tomatoes,
Oh, yeah.
that was a bummer for me because I love tomatoes and I
Yeah.
actually grow them in my garden. I have tons
Uh-huh.
of tomatoes every year.
Yes.
And well, fortunately, I'm pretty sure I'm a kappa.
Yeah, there is this concept of, if we want to dig into pitta, pitta as an energy pattern is both fire and water. Okay. So you can be a liquid pitta and be vata pitta, but actually you have an element of kapha because of the water element. If we go back to space, air, fire, water, and earth, the five elements are broken down and expressed as Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. Vata is space and air, easy to see. Pitta, let's go to Kapha. Kapha is water and earth. Okay. So space and air, water, earth. Who's in between? Pitta. Pitta sits right in the middle and it has fire, but it has water, and water is shared with kapha. So if you have a watery element to your physiology, you have an element of kapha
Mm-hmm.
in your physiology. That means that you have vata elements, you have a little bit of kapha element, and you have a pitta element. So all three of these together are expressed. And if you have a really high water element, then that could make you look, do, and feel more like kapha. And I've seen people who have really good endurance and stamina and strength, and they look like they're vata pitta, but they've got an element of kapha to them. And that water element becomes very, very important. And it may be that you have an element of water to your physiology. But I mean, just looking at you from a physiological standpoint, are pitta vata, pitta
Huh.
vata. So you are a strong pitta, no question about it. You're a strong pitta, but you could have a very strong water element to yourself that gives you good strength, stamina, endurance, etc.
Okay. So what is interesting is that from the assessment, I'm a 3, 4, 5.
Hmm.
My kapha is the strongest.
Yes, and it could be, when you think of a strong kapha, you think of that Green Bay Packer linebacker, very
I'm not
strong,
that, definitely
stout.
not.
No, no, no. But I mean, let's put Beyonce into this equation.
Uh,
Beyonce is definitely kapha, big, strong woman. I mean, muscle groups. She has the strength and stamina of a strong kapha.
huh.
And yet, there are other expressions of kapha that actually make it more to what I would call lightweight kapha.
Mm.
And you could fit into that category. You have to be careful about these various surveys. Questionnaire is actually meant to help start plugging you into the understanding of Vata Pitta Kapha. But the questionnaire has its limitations.
Yeah.
And probably the best way to really understand your constitutional makeup is through pulse.
Mm-hmm.
See, pulse really is the best way to understand the expression. Pulse sometimes can be misleading because the pulse may not necessarily tell you the water component of the pitta that you're feeling.
Mm.
That is, the pulse can tell you the basic underlying constitutional makeup. So you can feel yourself as Vata Pitta Kapha in various proportions by the pulse. It doesn't tell you the water element of the Pitta, and that is an issue. That is
Mm.
really the issue for the pulse. The questionnaire is even less demonstrative of the constitutional makeup, what you were born as.
Mm-hmm.
Were you born as a Vata Pitta? Were you born as Pitta Vata? Were you born as a combination of Kapha Pitta, Pitta Kapha? These are all constitutional makeups that when you come out of the incubator, you're actually coming out as that particular makeup. And then as you go along in life, you refine that constitutional
Oh,
makeup.
do we?
Yes. But you don't change it. That's
Okay.
the key. That's the key. You come out of the incubator, say Pitta Vata. But then as you move along through life, you pick up certain imbalances that create challenge to the physiology. It becomes somewhat complicated pretty quickly. But the issue is that the makeup of the physiology that you come out with it gets changed and altered because of life experiences and imbalances that you create for yourself. And the
Mm.
idea is that you want to go back and get back to that point where you were when you came out of the incubator. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, that is so interesting.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, from hearing you say, I'm probably not a strong kappa, so I need to get away of tomatoes.
Well, I hate to say never because there is an aspect of the benefit of having a strong Agni.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Agni is called the precious gift. Like we were talking about earlier, when the athlete can eat anything,
Mm-hmm.
junk food, et cetera, et cetera, the reason he gets away with it is because of his strong Agni. So if you have a strong Agni, it can take care of all of the problems and miscues that you're doing, really still maintain balance.
Okay.
So if you maintain a good Agni and you use particular herbs, reinforce that Agni, then maybe tomatoes could be used, once a week or twice a week, but definitely not every day.
Okay.
Every day would just be way too much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So is that valid for everything, even the foods
Yes.
that are in the no column?
Yes. Yes. You can get away with using no foods on occasion.
Mm-hmm.
You just shouldn't be using them every day. If
Mm-hmm.
you use them every day, you're asking for trouble. Just end of story. You're asking for trouble. And the moderate group, two, three times a week, but not every day. And then those foods in the S column all the time, all the time. They are
Mm-hmm.
your go-to foods.
Mm-hmm.
They will promote balance.
Yeah.
And the
So,
more you stay with that, the better it is. The other thing is that the health of the GI tract is terribly important. From a nutrition standpoint, we tend to undermine or understate it. but there is nothing more important than a healthy GI tract, and particularly an alkaline GI tract.
Mm.
And an alkaline GI tract is demonstrated through salivary pH. So the salivary pH will help tell you how you're doing with respect to the pH in the GI tract. The body does best on a relatively alkaline side, that is 7.4, 7.3, 7.2, but no lower than 7.2. So the salivary pH can be a determinant to seeing how well the physiology is doing from a GI tract standpoint. A green composite protein recipe can be very, very valuable in reversing those physiological acidity because most people walking on the planet these days are very acidic.
Mm-hmm.
They have very acidic physiologies, and that what that really relates to from an energy perspective is inflammation. Acidity is inflammation. So
Mm-hmm.
when you have a very acidic physiology, you have a very inflamed physiology, even though maybe your appetite is not so bad, it's not really hot, like we talked about, it's relatively healthy, but that acidic physiology will come home to haunt you in the future because now Western model is really saying that inflammation may be the root of all disease in the physiology.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, we should really be monitoring ourselves with respect to salivary pH and taking care of our GI tracts and maintaining alkalinity to
Mm-hmm.
a certain degree.
Yeah, so that is the problem with tomatoes, right? They are very acidic
Yes.
and
They're-
carbonated drinks like soda.
yeah, carbonated drinks, coffee, cheeses are problematic because they're difficult to digest.
Mm-hmm.
So the probably the worst food you can eat is pizza. And that's so common in our culture, you
Yeah.
know. Let's go out for pizza. There's a pizza place on every corner, and there's a Starbucks on every corner as well.
Yes.
So there are some real difficulties that we have. But the Agni will help bail us out to some degree at every step if we keep it healthy, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you from a household point of view, because then in a family we'll have people with different
oh
physiologies,
yeah,
right?
yes.
Energies. How can we cook for everybody?
In Ayurveda, they say the most spiritually advanced person in the household needs to be the cook.
Mm,
The cook needs to really be at the center of the household because they define the foods that are eaten. And there are commonalities in those three columns that can be helpful in terms of the person who's cooking. But actually, the cook, the person who's formulating and making the meals, is actually truly, as I think you're intimating, the health counselor in the family. They are the person who's responsible for the health of the family. And I've seen some just terrible examples. People give in to their children with respect to what they get
oh
at
yeah.
any meal. If they just had a steelier spine and said, "I'm sorry, I don't care whether you're hungry or you're not hungry, you're going to eat what is put in front of you for a period of time," because what that person is saying to their child is that you don't know what's best for you at this point in time.
Mm-hmm.
When you're 3 years old, 2 years old, you don't know what's best for you. And what I'm going to do is give you what's best for you. Now, when you're 12 and 15 and 18, you can make all the choices that you want. But right now, I'm making the choices for you because I know what's healthy for you and what's not.
Hmm.
And I think that that it really is points to the whole idea of who is helping the family be healthy. I personally think it's the biggest responsibility that any cook has is to maintain the health of the family unit
Hmm.
and to give them not necessarily what they want, but what is really good for them. Now, if you're cooking for a group of adults, that really becomes problematic. And at that point, you say, throw up your hands and you say, uh, it's okay. We're having a good time today. If you're going over to somebody's house and they have tomato this, tomato that, and you look at it and say, well, that's okay. We're having a good social outing. We can have fun and enjoy life, and I won't have to have tomatoes for another 3 or 4 months or so. Yeah. Uh,
So let me just ask you this. Is there anything about the energy of tomatoes, or it's just because they are very acidic?
well, if you combine the two disciplines, what we're really talking about is that the lycopenes in the tomato are problematic. But the other side of it is that from an energy perspective, even though they're very watery, they're very hot. And it's in the seeds of the tomato. Many of the imbalances that are created by certain foods happen to be in the seeds
Mm.
because the seeds happen to carry the density of the expression of the energy that is present in the food. You can remove a lot of the imbalance of a particular food by removing the seeds.
Oh,
Just
wow.
because if you think about it, the seed is the densest part of the fruit or of the food that produces the energetic expression of that food.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to scrape out all the seeds from the tomato itself and just use the meat of the tomato on the outside, that would reduce the inflammatory change of the tomato.
Okay.
There are many different foods, like okra is a food that has these seeds in them. But if you remove the seeds, it becomes really a great detoxing agent. So
Mm.
there are certain foods that are extremely detoxifying, that are very helpful in detoxifying the gut. So foods like asparagus and okra, I'm blocking out some of the others, but the issue is that these foods can have very specific detoxifying effects. So if you're doing a detoxifying regimen, which I think is really valuable at the turns of the seasons. So between fall and winter, you go through a detox process of 7 weeks. And then in the spring, between winter and summer, you do another detox. Twice a year, you do a 7 week detox. And it's a very simple program, but it's very helpful in terms of revving the physiology up and getting it ready for the next season. These simple programs can be very, very helpful in terms of shedding the energy patterns that have been created through the wintertime. You get rid of them during the spring. Then you go through the summertime. And then in the fall, you shed those excess energies that you accumulated during the summertime.
Mm-hmm.
So so those are aspects that are helpful in terms of improving the physiology on a periodic basis.
Mm-hmm. So just going back to the example of the seeds,
Yeah,
if we take the seeds out of like cucumbers,
right.
tomatoes, peppers, okra, those very seedy
Yes,
veggies that
yes,
we usually eat, that is better.
yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
It reduces the imbalance that can be created by the food.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, I'm thinking of pistachios. Nuts are actually seeds.
Mm.
Almonds are actually seeds. They're actually
Mm-hmm.
not a nut, they're a seed. And those seeds have very concentrated properties. And almonds, if you soak and peel them and get rid of the pitta nature skin itself, the almond can be an extremely powerful nut to use. But there are other nuts like uh,
Walnuts?
walnuts or peanuts, particularly. Peanuts are really, really common, but they're really not very good for people. And the butters are even potentially worse. If you think about if you take in the peanut, any butter, any nut butter, what you find is that, it's really in the mouth. It's really sticky and gooey. Well, that same energetic property of gooiness or stickiness is
Mm.
also what's present in the GI tract itself. So
Mm.
that gooiness and stickiness that you're putting down into the GI tract is not very, really very healthy. So nut butters in general shouldn't be used a lot. I mean, I use an almond butter occasionally, but I don't use it every day. I mean, I would use it maybe every 2, 3 weeks. But because I just like the taste of the almond butter, but the nut butter particularly is not very good to use. Yeah.
Mm.
So
Okay. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So many nuances.
yeah, there are. I mean, the key is just to be with it and to ask questions and Google it or read about it, and one becomes over a period of time very nuanced nutritionist, I think. I think Western nutrition has its quantitative value, but it doesn't have the qualitative value.
Yeah.
See, that is the missing link here. And I think that if we get to a holistic point of view where we're seeing foods not as just quantitative, then we can really see our true nutritional scheme that's valuable.
Mm-hmm.
I used to look down at, I said, oh, these lab values. Sometimes you look at a lab value and you say, well, am I really seeing health? That's where I came to at one point. But now what I've realized is that these nuanced changes that sometimes occur. I mean, I would see people who came into the office, they were pre-op for some procedure, and they had an abnormal liver enzyme study. It wasn't like they were way out of whack and they weren't unhealthy, but they had these GPTs and GOTs that were really not in normal range. They don't have any symptoms, they're feeling okay. And so we just move it along. No adverse outcome. But the question always remained, why is it that these GOTs and GPTs are abnormal? And they're not abnormal, like totally out of whack. They're maybe 15, 20 units above normal. And what it really now comes down to is that they have hot livers.
Mm.
And the vast majority of people walk around with hot livers. You see, there's this benefit of seeing, well, I have this measurement, I don't understand what it is. But if I apply it to with the energy tradition, I realize, oh, that's why they have these mild elevations. I mean, people who are walking around with hot livers in this culture aren't sick, they aren't feeling bad, but their nutrition sucks.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem. And that they don't know it.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know that they're hot. Feeling hot in the physiology is different than metabolically being hot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can feel a normal temperature, even cool, yet I have a hot liver. I
Yeah.
have a liver that is really not functioning very well.
Mm-hmm.
That's where foods can change things. And you don't have to do liver flushes and all this exotic stuff. All you have to do is just use herbs with your meals and cook with them and don't use inflammatory foods.
Yeah.
Pretty simple.
Yeah. Yeah, the seeds like pumpkin seeds and sunflower seeds and chia seeds, those seeds that are considered really nutritious and healthy, they are in the same categories as tomato seeds and cucumbers and all that. We better
Yes, I
live
would.
without them.
Well, it depends on who you are, from an energy point of view. But if you look at them, people are making choices based on who's just said that flax seeds are the best things next to sliced bread. It doesn't really make much sense because from a molecular standpoint, you may be increasing your imbalance. Most of these seeds or nuts are really in the moderate category. It shouldn't be used every day, is what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
always good to bring awareness again to the
Yeah.
subject, and I hope everybody has the the willingness to try and see how they feel because that is the point, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
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 That's it. That's
All
it.
right. Just being respectful about your time.
Yeah.
Tell people where they can buy your book.
Yeah. You can pick it up at Amazon. That's the only place it's available. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So
just look
foods
up Food
heal.
Seal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why certain foods help you feel your best.
Yeah.
And that's
That's
what
it.
we all want, right? Feel
Yeah.
our best.
Yes, exactly. From an energy perspective, the mind is everywhere. It's escaped. It's no longer in the brain. It's no longer in the skull. It's everywhere in the body. So when we say mind body, it's really not well understood what that term means in the West. But from the Ayurvedic perspective, mind body means exactly that, that mind and body are intimately spliced and you cannot separate them. They are one and the same. So when you're watching somebody walk down the street, you're actually watching a mind. And mind not only becomes a personal thing, but it becomes a collective thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a collective mind as well as a personal mind. And, there are various studies that have shown that people who meditate in a particular area where there's a high crime rate, that when the group meditates in that area, the crime rate goes down.
Mm-hmm.
What is happening in that such situation from an energy perspective? It's just that the people who are there are collectively as a mind changing the collective mind outside them. And that's why I think these protests and why I've been involved in political activism for a while, why that's so important. Because when people group together as a protest, they are changing the collective mind narrative of the society itself. So the more and more people show up, the better it is. A number that's thrown around in the West with respect to altering the course of a society of slipping into authoritarianism. And
Mm-hmm.
that number happens to be 3.5%,
Mm-hmm.
which is for the United States, 11 million people.
Wow.
So all it takes to prevent an authoritarian takeover of the country is 3.5 million of us. And I think that we're beyond that point. There's another number that comes up that says that it only takes 1% of a population to change the whole population. In
Mm.
other words, comes from the 100 monkey experiment that you may have heard about, where a monkey named Sophia decides to go down and wash her fruit in the river rather than eating the fruit with the rocks in it. And she was one of 100 monkeys, so to speak. So that 1% comes out of that experiment. But the bottom line is that if we take 100% of the population, and it only takes 1% of that population to change, then we know that we're on the right track to alter the mind, that is, the mind of the collective consciousness. I think that that is the whole heart of protesting. You change the collective mind. So,
Yeah. So that gives me hope because our
yeah,
conversation is another example of protesting, right? So as we speak
exactly.
about those things, we are raising awareness and we are changing the collective consciousness.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. In actuality, you and I are being healers,
Hmm.
just expressions of healing community. And we feel like, oh, well, we're just isolated little entities, but no, we're not. We're not isolated at all. And people make light of the fact that, oh, we're just parts of nature. Well, indeed, we are. We are nature. And each one of us are expressions of that nature. To be part of that and to recognize it says, wow, I have a really important role here.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Not only are you a cook for the family, but you're also a cook for the community at large.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. We'll
Yeah.
we'll keep moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
One person
Very
at a
good.
time. We'll get to
Yeah.
the 3.5%.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. That's
Change.
right. Get your protest sign up.
Yes. Oh, so good. Thank
Okay.
you so much, Dr.
Oh, you
Jan.
bet. It's great being with you, Anna. It was really fun
Yeah.
talking with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. Awesome.
Likewise. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stay well.
Take
Thank
care.
you. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and want to go deeper, schedule a free discovery call with me to see if my personalized one-on-one coaching is a good fit for you. The scheduling link is in the show notes. See you in the next episode. Until then, remember, good is what makes you feel well.